All right, so this is actually starting off at the Wiener Roast. Remember, at the end of the chapter, Gypsy insulted Woodrow, so she felt bad for insulting him, kind of like making fun of the fact that his mom is trying to contact him. He keeps telling these stories, so she said a joke about, oh, maybe she'll call you on the phone, and that kind of upset him. So she said, all right, well, maybe we can have a hot dog roast or whatever. So this is that happening. I want to sit on the stump, Buzz insisted when we were all gathered around the fire that Saturday night about the end of June. It was a perfect evening, except for a wasper, which Buzz killed, and a few gnats. The insects didn't get on us much. There was only one stump, and for that reason I suggested we all sit on the ground Indian fashion. But Buzz could be hard-headed as they come, and he was bound and determined to get his own way. I guess we were all a little chicken-hearted when it came to Buzz, because he had a reputation for beating people up. Right, so this kid Buzz is kind of like the bully, right? You've seen him earlier on in the story. He's just kind of nasty to people. And exits. What are you saying over here? All right. Why, certainly, Woodrow said, as agreeable as all get out. If Buzz wants to sit on the stump, let him. Right, so they're kind of like obviously allowing Buzz to kind of get what he wants. Right, the gypsy wants everyone to sit on the floor. Buzz is like, nope, I'm going to go sit on the stump. And Woodrow's like, go ahead. So whether I liked it or not, Buzz climbed on the stump. I was disgruntled, which means unhappy, because it put him way yonder higher than the rest of us, and we had to look up to see him. On top of that, he decided he wanted to tell a story. Seemed like everybody had a story these days. We listened politely as he told his tale that we had all heard before. Only he said it happened to his aunt, and we knew darn well that it was a lie. He said one day she went to eat from a can of store-bought tomatoes, and there amongst the tomatoes was a human finger. She got so sick she puked all night long. Then she rode to the factory where they canned those tomatoes, and sure enough, they said yes, one of their workers there lost a finger when he was on the job, and nobody ever found that finger. But thanks to Buzz's aunt, now they knew what had happened, and they sent her a whole case of canned tomatoes, which she didn't want, as a reward. All right, so what happened in that story? Buzz's story. What's Buzz's story?
Someone's finger went chop chop and someone ate it.
Well, they didn't eat it. They found it where?
Oh, they found it in a can of tomatoes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So this was like a story that he's telling.
Chip, chop, chop.
Yeah, he's telling people this story to kind of like gross them out a little bit. There's actually a real famous book that came out in I forget what year it was published, but it was called The Jungle. And it was basically about meat packing factories where they like chop up meat. And it was like a really disgusting book about how bad the meat industry was. And because of it, lots of things actually changed. So back in the day, like the meat industry, where like we get our beef and stuff, was like disgusting. Like it was all these ridiculously crazy stories about how dangerous it was, how sickening it was, and because of that book, like lots of changes actually wound up happening in terms of like how meat is produced. You have a question, Thomas?
What's canned tomato?
Canned tomatoes. So tomatoes in a can. You've never had canned tomatoes before?
No.
Yeah. So yeah, if you make no, Hispanics kind of use canned tomatoes sometimes. So sometimes we
Is
use.
it like
Sometimes we use. Well, if you make spaghetti, so if you make like a homemade spaghetti, you use canned tomatoes sometimes. If you cook like beans, like Spanish style beans, you use canned tomatoes. Depends on what you cook.
Mister, so you're talking about the sauce, right? It's the sauce?
Well, they're like no, because there's different kinds. So you can use like they're like chopped up tomatoes. Yeah, there's different ones too. Yeah, if you go to the store, you'll see them. Like if you go to like especially like the pasta section, if you look, there's canned tomatoes. Like there'll be a spot for like tomato sauce, but then if you look further down, there's like a spot where it's just like canned tomatoes. So like people want to make like more homemade style tomatoes, use canned tomatoes.
That's weird.
Yeah, that's all right. It allows it to last longer. All right, so we told Buzz that was a real good story. Dog wiggled in between me and John Ed and gobbled up a weenie somebody had dropped on the ground. Then she sighed and lay down beside me and put her head in my lap. Now you tell us a story, Woodrow, Rita said. What's the matter, Fatty? Buzz said irritably. You didn't like my story? Rita didn't say anything. She just dropped her head. So again, you see Buzz's character coming out even more, and he's just being nasty. Speaking of fingers being chopped off, Woodrow said quickly, and I noticed he laid a hand gently on Rita's plump tanned arm. It reminds me of a good one. What is Woodrow doing here? In that line. What did Woodrow do there? It's very subtle, but he did something.
Flirting with her?
It's kind of like, well, it's kind of like flirtation, but it's actually more like a consolation. So what did Buzz just do immediately right before?
He made fun of her?
Yeah, exactly right. So you're basically kind of seeing Woodrow's positive nature. So Buzz is being nasty. He's being a bully.
He's trying to comfort her.
Exactly. So he's comfortable. He's comforting her, but he's being very subtle about it, right? He does it in small ways. So this girl just got put down by Buzz. So what does he do? He puts his hand on her arm to kind of like be a friend, right? So again, you kind of see like Woodrow's niceness. It reminds me of a good one. It was a winter 2 years ago and cold enough to freeze the abdominal snowman. He's using the wrong word here. It should be abominable. It ain't abominable. It's abominable, Buzz chided, so Buzz always has to say something. Right, Woodrow went on. It's a joke, Buzz. Anyway, my Aunt Millie was awful sick. In fact, she was on her deathbed. Me and Daddy and Mama were out there trying to do what we could to help Uncle Russell out. But it happened it was the only one in the room with Aunt Millie at one particular moment when she turned her face to me and said, Woody, my boy, dying ain't nothing but changing your form like water turns to steam, you know? Then she closed her eyes and died right in front of me. I liked to cry my eyes out because I loved her. Will Stacy belched really big. He had put away 4 hot dogs. We were all working on a sucker, which had caused Woodrow to pause and get in a couple of licks. Sucker being a lollipop. So we buried her the next day, Woodrow went on. All right, so what happened to Aunt Millie? You got to make sure that you're paying attention to the story because otherwise you will get lost.
She died.
Yeah, so she died, right?
Yeah, she died, and basically she said her last words and stuff like that.
So Uncle Russell didn't have the money for an undertaker. An undertaker is the person who buries the bodies at the cemetery. And a casket, that's where you put the body in, right? So he made his own coffin out of pine. Pine's a type of wood. Aunt Millie always loved the smell of pine, and he lined it with that warm, soft stuff Aunt Millie used to line quilts, to keep her warm, he said. Then he dressed her up in her white wedding dress because it was the only fine thing she had to wear. And he left her diamond ring on her finger because he couldn't get it off. It was just a little old diamond anyway, but she was always so proud of it. She never took it off from the day she married Uncle Russell, and she would tell folks how he had saved up money for 3 years, and he ordered it special from Baltimore. We all gathered at the grave, the Praters and the Honeckers. Aunt Millie was a Honecker before she married Uncle Russell, but don't hold that against her. So obviously the Honeckers have a reputation of what? If I say don't hold something against you, what does that mean? You guys ever hear that phrase before?
Honecker is was like a single or something.
No, Honecker is the name of a family. It's like saying I'm a Rivera, or you guys are a Ramoses, or Santiagos, or Diaz's.
Santiago's.
So if I say that don't hold that against me, that I'm a Rivera, what does that mean about the Riveras?
Well, that means that's their last name, and they have a personality against them.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's basically saying they're bad, right? So if I say the Honeckers or don't hold it against you that you're a Rivera, it just means you're bad or something, right? So in this story, the Honeckers must have a negative reputation, right? So this family. All the neighbors came, including the Sloanes. I'll tell you how those Sloanes are. They wouldn't miss a funeral for anything, especially Bertie and Gertie. So we had a graveside service there above the old home place where all the Praters were buried. First, the preacher prayed with us over the open casket. Then we placed holly with red berries on top of her, because there wasn't a flower to be found anywhere in that cold. Next, Uncle Russell fastened the lid down with his leather ties he'd made. He lowered her into the hole and he shoveled it full of dirt his own self while we all cried. Then it started to snow. There was silence for a moment except for the frogs and Franklin Delano wheezing. He had asthma. A little breeze rippled through the apple trees and an owl hooted. We shivered and moved closer to the fire, just like we could feel the cold winter day Woodrow was talking about. Mom and Daddy and me went over to Uncle Russell's to fix supper for him and keep him company, for he was tore up pretty good. When it got dark, he said to us, "I reckon you all could spend the night." Right, so they're all kind of feeling bad, because the lady had died, and they're kind of trying to comfort the uncle. Um, and the guy's like, "Oh, can you stay the night?" And then we said we reckoned we could, so they're staying. By 10 o'clock, it was snowing hard. We stoked the heating stove, rolled ourselves up in quilts, and talked quiet-like for a long time, mostly about Aunt Millie. Woodrow's voice grew soft. There was a nice smell in the room that somehow seemed to belong to her. And there were shadows on the walls, and I wondered, was she close by? Could she hear us? Hadn't she said death is no more than changing forms? So maybe she was one of them shadows or a whiff of whatever that was smelling so good. So again, Woodrow's trying to add elements to his story to kind of make it a little scary, right? Then Uncle Russell took the one bed, Mom and Daddy took the other, and that left me to sleep on the floor in front of the heating stove. But I didn't mind. I thought I could keep the fire burning all night. I'll never forget it. My old dog Moses had recently died, and I still missed him. So I was dreaming about him when it seemed like I heard somebody calling my name, Woody, kinda soft. Then the voice said, "Woody, I'm so cold." And again, Woody. Well, there was only one person in the world who called me Woody. Do you know who that was? Who? We all said at the same time, but we knew who. Aunt Millie. Nobody else ever called me Woody except for her. I woke up shivering and I pulled the quilt tighter around me and listened, but all was quiet. Out the window near me I could see snow coming down thick. Then I knew something wasn't right. I could feel a cold draft, and I thought the door must have blowed open. So I rolled over and I looked at the front door. Then I died. She was standing there in the open doorway. Who? Aunt Millie. Her ghost? That's what I thought, a ghost. But it was really her standing there in this white dress with snow all over her hair and blood all over her front. Blood? Yeah, blood. She was looking right at me and holding out one hand towards me, and it was the hand that was bleeding. Woody, she said, "I'm so cold." And I started hollering. Why is he screaming?
Because he's getting scared that she's standing right in front of the doorway.
Yeah, exactly.
He's getting scared because she's bleeding and he saw her and he saw the funeral and everything and he was wondering how is she there?
Exactly right. She's not supposed to be there. Where's she supposed to be?
And her
Supposed
funeral
to be in her casket.
Yeah, exactly. She's supposed to be dead.
Not in her casket.
How would you feel if you saw a dead woman standing in the doorway at night in the snow calling your name?
I
Well,
would throw things
That'd be
at her.
scary.
I'll tell you one
I
thing
would
right
throw
now.
things at her.
I'll tell you one
Right
thing.
then and there, I'd have a heart attack.
I'll tell you one thing right now. You wouldn't feel good about it. And if I'd been an old person like Granny or Grandpa, I would have had a heart attack on the spot. I about did anyhow. Mom and Daddy and Uncle Russell came rushing in. When they saw Aunt Millie, all of them froze where they stood. I'll declare the natural laws of the world seemed reversed. You couldn't believe your eyeballs. It was Uncle Russell who came to his senses first. He grabbed her and he brought her to the heating stove. "My darlings, come back to me," he said. When it was all sorted out, what happened was this. The Sloane sisters, Bertie and Gertie, saw that diamond ring on Aunt Millie's finger at the graveside service, and they decided to dig her up. Why were they digging her up?
Because they wanted to take the ring.
Exactly, they're after her ring. Take the ring, fill the grave again, and then nobody would know the difference. But when they tried to get to the ring, it wouldn't come off her finger. So they took a knife and they cut her finger off. That's when Aunt Millie rose up and shouted, "What the hell are you doing to me?" That scared Bertie and Gertie so bad that they ran away screaming, and Aunt Millie crawled out the grave. She was a little bit out of her head and didn't really know what was happening, but she knew how to get home. "How could that happen?" Garnet said. "Did she come back to life?" "Shoot, no, Garnet. She never was dead to start with. We buried her alive. But she sure seemed dead." Bertie and Gertie Sloane actually saved her life by trying to rob her grave. "Well, did she die then?" Franklin Delano wanted to know. "Nope. That night, Uncle Russell took her to the Clinch Valley Clinic where they stitched up her hand and kept her for a while. Then they sent her home. She's alive and kicking to this very day." "What about Bertie and Gertie?" Ed said. "Both of them, their hair turned white overnight. The next time anybody saw them, they were down at the Church of Jesus getting saved. They swore they'd never steal anything again, and they sent Aunt Millie's ring back to her by way of the preacher. They had put it in a little old aspirin tin with cotton all around it. Of course, Aunt Millie had to wear it on her pinky after that. But she said that was a small price to pay for her life." "Is that the truth, Woodrow? Did you make that up?" Buzz said. "It's the truth, Buzz. Really happened." "You always want to know something really true," Woodrow said. "Well, I like to know," Buzz said. "I don't like stories that somebody made up." "We didn't say a word about his canned tomato story." "Why didn't they say anything about his canned tomato story?"
Because they knew that one's a lie.
Exactly right. Exactly. So this guy's like, "I don't like lies." Meanwhile, he's lying his head off. Now, I have another story, Buzz announced. "It's about a rabid squirrel. It's a true story, too." What does that mean if if an animal is rabid? Does anybody know what that word means? RABID.
I know they're
They
like
have rabies or
Yeah, exactly.
wild.
Yeah, it means an animal has rabies. Yeah, so rabies is actually a really dangerous disease. So, like, if you bite it, you can get rabies, and actually, it can actually kill you. So, if you ever see an animal that's acting really strange, growling, or if it has like foam in its mouth, you got to stay the heck away from it.
run.
Yeah, yeah. If the animal bites you, you can get that disease, and then you have to get a crazy shot. But it was a big problem. And basically, it's crazy too. It's like rabies actually makes you behave like a zombie from like zombie movies. Like you start like foaming and you like literally like want to start attacking things. That's why like
Zombies come to life.
yeah. So the rabid animals, if you ever watch them, they just like do really weird things and they want to attack.
Rabies.
Yeah, it's craziness.
I always got scared of that.
Yeah, well, you should be. Yeah. "Hold on there," Peggy Sue said. "Which one was it, a rabbit or a squirrel?" So she's making a joke. Well, with that, we all got hysterical, so we're all laughing. And we started telling jokes one on top of another. Woodrow wanted me to tell the eyeball one, but everybody heard it. So I asked him to tell the 2/10 one, which he did, and everybody liked it. In the midst of carrying on and acting like a fool, I glanced up at Buzz and I saw he was not laughing at all. Uh-oh. Somebody must have stepped on his corns real hard. He was looking at Woodrow like he might want to clobber him. "So, what's going on with Buzz?"
Mister, was that a metaphor or like a figurative
Idiom?
Yeah, it's an idiom essentially. Yeah, it's a idiom. It's a phrase. So it's basically like just showing that he's really upset, right? You guys know what a corn is? Do you ever hear?
Yeah.
What is a corn? Not like corn you eat. What's a corn? Anybody hear that? A corn.
I think.
A corn is actually a nasty thing that you get on your foot.
Uh,
Let me see if I can find a picture of it.
No, thanks.
Those are corns. See that? Ugh. So used to be common. So people probably like used to walk around with no shoes and have all kinds of things. But you get corn on your feet. So if I say somebody stepped on my corn,
Check it out.
yeah,
Check it out.
they're saying that somebody stepped on my corn. Obviously, that hurts. So people used to have like more foot diseases and stuff back in the day too. So what he's really implying is that somebody must have pissed off Buzz. Why is Buzz mad?
because maybe
Because they're making jokes about his story?
Well, they're not making jokes about his story.
It's because they're all having fun and nobody laughed when he was making stories or jokes.
Exactly. So this kid is just really
So
jealous.
he's technically pissed off.
Yeah, he's jealous. This guy wants to be the center of attention all times, and he's mad that he's not. Everybody's laughing at like everybody else's stuff.
Ooh.
Hey, Woodrow, he hollered suddenly. Was your mama cross-eyed? So how does he react to that? He gets nasty, right? So he starts asking him. Obviously, it's like a double blow. One, obviously, it's making fun of the fact that Woodrow is cross-eyed, and two, he's bringing up his mother, right? Two kind of like negative things. Those foul words fell like a wet blanket on our good time. That's an example of what?
Simile?
Yes, a simile. So obviously, everyone gets upset when he says that, right? Because it's just kind of like ruining the party. He's spoiling it. Nobody said anything for the longest time. I guess we were trying to think of something to say that wouldn't make Buzz matter, or insult Woodrow either. No, Woodrow said at last, just me. Oh, well, where'd you get him? Buzz went on. Maybe those cockeyed stories the girls seemed to like so much crossed her goofy eyes. We had interrupted his story about a rabid squirrel. It was plain we really didn't care about his stories, and he was jealous of Woodrow. Well, I'll tell you, Woodrow said brightly. When they were giving out looks, I thought they said books, and I said, give me a funny one. So what's that joke about? You guys understand that joke?
About his beauty.
Yeah, exactly right. So he's saying like he wanted a funny. He thought that they were gonna when they were giving out looks, he wanted a funny one. So it's like that's why he was funny looking. That got us started again. It was like these knock knock jokes. Everybody had one. When they were giving out brains, Peggy Sue chimed in. I thought they said pains, and I said, don't give me any. When they were giving out noses, I thought they said roses, and I said, give me a big red one, Willie said. And around it went. I stole a peep at Woodrow. He seemed to still be having a good time. It was after everybody left that I said to him, sorry about Buzz, Woodrow. Next time, we'll not even ask him. Ah, shoot, don't worry about Buzz, Woodrow said cheerfully. He won't have time to get us in trouble for a while. He'll be too busy scratching. Well, what do you mean? I said. You know that stump he was sitting on? Yeah. It was Chigger's national headquarters. So what are Chiggers again?
Those little bugs.
Exactly
Those
right.
little red bugs.
Exactly. So
That they give you like horrible things like scratches on your skin.
Exactly. So that's basically Woodrow was getting his revenge, right? So Woodrow got his revenge by saying, "Oh yeah, go sit on there. It's perfect," because he knew that it was going to be basically those bugs. All right. So 3 questions on Socrative. Make sure this first response should be 4 sentences long. The second one should be 6 sentences long, and then the last one probably like 2 sentences.
Excuse me, what?
Yeah. Actually, let me stop the thing. Where's that?